Harrison with you, and as you know, there are many creative people out there. So many of us, because the way the market exists, have iPhones, have iPads. In fact, more of us do than do not nowadays. And there are a lot of creative and amazing people who make them more interesting than not. For instance, since the beginning of humankind, we've looked up in the skies and wondered, what is that, and why is it what it is? But we could only see what was available to us. With light pollution, we see even less. Well, there's a guy sitting right in front of me right now, and you now see him. His name is Tim DeBenedictis, and he has created a series of apps that allow us to actually see satellites in orbit, to actually track where they're going, see the entire sky. But get this, he's launching a satellite, a mini satellite, which we're going to see in just one moment, that's going to allow you and me to talk to each other without having to rely on the larger structures. A citizen satellite. So it's time now to have our own personal satellite, Tim?
It's about that time. Absolutely. Thanks, Harrison.
Well, we're glad to have you here because, first of all, we love a good geek.
Cool. And I hope you've got one.
Yes, we've got one trapped in here right now with you. And as a good geek, you're a science fiction guy.
Right.
You love that. I did too.
Right.
The Day the Earth Stood Still the greatest science fiction movie probably ever made. But you decided that the way we tweet and do the rest of it, we're really reliant on other people's systems. And they spy on us and they track us and do all the rest of it. But you've created, and hold this thing up, this little satellite here. Tim is holding up this is a satellite. Hold it up just a little higher there, Tim.
You bet. I'm going to turn it around here a little bit.
And this thing, and you can see I'm reaching through, we're actually in the same room. You wouldn't know it from watching the video. This little box, which is the size of a
well, it's exactly 10 centimeters on a side. It's a size of a big coffee cup, right? Mm-hmm. And this is the size of it's called a CubeSat. It's a university standard size, kind of invented at Stanford in around 2000. There have been about 150 of these kinds of things launched so far. And it's not really well known outside of the academic community that it's even possible to do this kind of thing. Yeah. I mean, look, as you say, I've been a science fiction geek my entire life. I've been a space nerd since I was 8 years old. And I had never heard the term CubeSat until last summer. So I think we're actually really on the verge of something, very new, and that could very well take off quite a bit as it becomes more widely known what you can do with these little guys.
Now, since I've been teasing you with what he's been holding up there, I want you to be able to see this, and you can watch a video stream right now at goharrison.com, goharrison.com, or you can go to YouTube and see it, a keyword PRNFM, and you'll see what Tim DeBenedictis is talking about right now. He's launching the first ever citizen satellite service so that you and I can talk to each other, and this is my favorite part, from one geek to another. I don't use nerd because I still can't quite align myself with that.
You got to choose your words carefully. So
definitely fighting words, fight with yourself. But one of the things that you're going to let us do is I would be able, with my iPhone, for instance, to take pictures of Germany with your satellite. Is that right?
That's right.
Unlike now, I can't pull out Twitter and take pictures through my Twitter. No, I don't have that reach or access. You're giving us our own spy satellite in a sense.
Well, that spy satellite's a touchy word, actually. We're totally
nerd
dead
satellite.
On. Yeah, that's a little closer to it. You can definitely take pictures with SkyCube. That is really the main product of the image. Of the mission. It's images, pictures. I'm going to hold up one of the cameras. It's in my hand here right now. I'm handing it over to Harrison. It's about an inch across.
So you can see this thing is about an inch.
Okay.
And I'm just going to cut to a larger shot here. We are video streaming on goharrison.com right now in high-def video, and you're seeing the camera, and I'm holding it up right now. And this is Tim's tiny little camera able to do some very large things.
Absolutely, right. This camera could do things like capture all of Germany in one picture, take pictures of hurricanes. We've tested these at night. I'm photographing out of the night sides of airplane windows, right? And so you could do things like map out the lights of cities at night or look at auroras from space. It's really intended to show you planetary
What about
size.
areolas from space? If a woman tore off her bikini top and pointed herself heavenward.
Aren't we doing this in Marilyn Monroe's old place?
Yes, we are right now coming to you from Marilyn Monroe's former apartment in West Hollywood, California, where it is appropriate and opprobrious simultaneously to discuss, bikini.
So I guess I'll have to work on both high resolution and time travel in the same satellite package, next time around. But, the idea is that, look, we've all seen pictures of the Earth from space, but they're not, your pictures. Yeah. I mean, there are pictures some NASA satellite has taken, or they're in Google Earth, right? But this really makes it personal. You'll be able to request, that picture of Afghanistan or Italy or Israel or California, and then the satellite will eventually go over that place, take the picture, radio it down, and you'll get your personalized picture of that wherever you want it to be taken back to your iPhone within a day.
Let me just give out your website as well. If you're catching us and not able to see the video stream as it's happening right now, SkyCube, one word, SkyCube.org, SkyCube.org. You can see, if you are watching the video right now, what it looks like on the right side of your screen. We're talking to Tim DeBenedictis,
right?
The man of the Benedict. The Benedictine man.
The man whose great-great-great-great-granddad was left on the steps of the Benedictine monastery, actually.
Nice.
Of the Benedictines, correct. Yeah.
So he's brought forth that which the Vatican refused to do, and he's giving us communication with each other. And unlike Google Earth, which you point out, or even Apple Maps that we look at, those photographs are about 2 years old sometimes.
Right, they're static. They're still, someone else took them. This is, it's not exactly real time, but it's, what it looked like yesterday.
Now, for people listening right now, let's say in Florida, where hurricanes aplenty, tropical storms every other day, or Bermuda, wherever you might happen to be, this is a ubiquitous app. It'll work anywhere for the people of Earth.
Anywhere you get internet service on Earth. In other words, the satellite isn't transmitting the photos directly to your phone. How it works is the satellite radios them down to a ground station, which is on the internet, and then we transmit the images from that ground station by just email. Or by a phone app to your phone. So we're essentially providing that service that, say, ordinarily NASA would provide. So we are letting you use your phone as a tool to take images from space.
And we all like a good tool. Harrison with you. You are listening to Go Harrison. We are talking to Tim DeBenedictis. He is the founder, the inventor, the original geek and nerd who also created a series of apps that are currently available for iPhone and iPad. And hold up your iPad, Tim, right now. You were showing me, and if you are watching the video stream, you can actually see this, but I'll describe it verbally in case you're not. He's holding up an iPad, aiming it right at us here. And hold it up just a little higher, Tim.
Betcha.
Right here. I'm just going to hold it up. And I undid the video. And you're going to bring the app back up, Tim, because I pushed your home button.
Quite okay.
Taking us down to your home screen and opening up your bank accounts. I am glad. That, by the way, is your former history as well, is creating secure systems for banks. This is good to know because it means that you also understand the back end of everything. So I'm holding this up, and as you can see right now, this is Earth spinning around in outer space, and all those little green dots, you'll see a ton of little green dots there. Those little green dots are live satellites right now spinning around, and the one to the lower right looks like a long chain of green dots. Those are our communication satellites, like DirecTV, who's a partner and a helper of this show. Sirius Satellite. I started the gay channel on Sirius Satellite 7 years ago. I wish I could say that people listen to it today, but that's because they gossip a lot, and this is one thing we don't do here. We actually talk about grown-up stuff. Like you, Tim, creating communication for the people of Earth. This must mean that you're also progressive. I'm guessing, but I think I may be right.
No, I think you're more or less on it. Look, like I said, I've been kind of a space geek my entire life. My dad, ran an educational computing center, but on the side, he, took us out to look at Jupiter's moons at night with a telescope and had us hike around in the sort of the woods outside of Syracuse, New York, where I grew up. And so we had a very deep appreciation, for the Earth as kids. And the message of all this space science stuff that we do, underlying it all, is that the Earth is a really unique place. I mean, we've mapped out every moon and planet in the solar system. We have maps of Mars that are better than maps of many places we have on the Earth. And the bottom line is there's no place that we found that has life, that has any kind of conditions that can support life We also know how, because we've studied other places, we know how we're affecting the environment here on the Earth, and that knowledge has come from looking at other places. So it's really important that we take care of this little spot here.
Let's talk about that for just a second. We're talking to Tim DeBenedictis. He is the founder of SkyCube. SkyCube.org is the website, SkyCube.org. It's a nonprofit. He's launching the first ever citizen satellite into outer space where you and I can not only communicate with each other, but we can on demand take pictures of whatever we want on Earth. So if there is a hurricane, if there is a tropical storm, you could take a picture with your iPhone through his little cube satellite and see where you are relative to that storm. And one of the things that's really cool about that is about a year ago, we did that when Hurricane Irene covered the East Coast and went to New York. The station was down in New York, so we went live from this studio here and we're able to show satellite images and be the eyes and ears of some of the people of New York using their iPhone. That still hasn't been replicated since we did it a year ago today, but it's the same sort of thing you're doing. You're making real life, real time available to the average person and enhancing them and expanding their eyes and ears. I imagine there's a nominal fee for all of this?
Sure. Well, so the way we have sort of funded this mission is by using crowdsourcing. In other words, this isn't a satellite that we've just built. It's a satellite that everyone can own. Our formula is pretty simple. It's $1 buys you 10 seconds of the mission. And what you get for your dollar is you get to broadcast a message of your choosing from space at 915 megahertz during that 10-second period. For $6, you funded a minute of the mission, 60 seconds. That gives you 6 messages and an image, right? So and it builds from there. For $10, you'll get 100 seconds, 10 messages, 2 images, and we actually have some high value packages as well. So if, for example, you are the kind of guy who you can drop $6,000 on the project. We'll fly you to Florida for the launch. You'll get up close VIP seating at where the Apollo astronauts' wives sat for those launches.
Oh, I love it.
You'll get to operate the satellite for a full day in orbit. And you can kind of make a movie of the Earth, from your phone. There's a range for everyone, and there's packages for schools, and the couple $100 range where, say, a class would get T-shirts for the mission for their class. They could also get an amateur radio receiver, which would let them directly from space receive the satellite's broadcasts. All of this stuff is laid out on SkyCube.org.
Wow. SkyCube.org, SkyCube.org, it's one word, and it's a nonprofit, and he's put this together as his way of actually giving back. One of the things that we find with geeks, nerds, sci-fi people, much as we've talked to many of the cast of Star Trek in the past, we found a universal truth with so many, is that they realize that there is only one Earth, that it must be protected, that there is absolutely climate change, and that all of this stuff can come and go as quickly as it came and went, and that we are stewards of nature, and one of the things that we have to do is make sure that everyone has sort of a universal understanding and knowledge and education when it comes to all of this stuff so that we can make better choices and decisions. And I think ultimately when you're doing that for schools so that little Timmy, who's told that a Kardashian, or a Cardassian if it were Deep Space Nine, but a Kardashian is somehow more meaningful than anything else, you can offer what we would call balance. You offer the protein to the starch. And what more can anybody want to do?
Well, protein and starch are a pretty good, tasty combination there. So, I've been sort of telling a story when people have asked me about this, and it's really an analogy to something that's happened in historical time.
Are you Canadian?
I'm actually, Syracuse, New York. So if
close.
I throw in on a boat every now and then, that's guilty as charged.
It's okay.
Very close to guilty. But so around the same time I was getting into cosmos and Carl Sagan and planets, I happened to catch a Nova show about a place called Easter Islands. Okay, and Easter Island's in the middle of the Pacific. Sure. Okay, it's in the middle of absolutely nowhere, and it's 2,000 or 2,500 miles from the nearest land. Europeans didn't know about it until Captain Cook just stumbled across it in 1769. And when he got there, he found this completely, barren, rocky island, no trees, basically nothing alive, a couple hundred people just surviving on, scrub brush and a couple of chickens. But the weird thing about this island was there were these giant stone heads all over the island, like 20 feet tall, weighing dozens of tons. There's no explanation for it. These people could not have possibly built those heads. There's just not enough of them. I mean, you couldn't move them without cranes. So as archaeologists looked into it, they realized that these stone heads were actually a remainder of something really bad that had happened there before. And so as they've sort of done archaeology and unearthed things, they've realized that this is what happened, right? The first people to come to Easter Island were the Polynesians, like hundreds of years before, around 1200 AD. And, they just came across the Pacific in canoes, and they landed there, and at that time, the island was full of trees, right? It was a green, beautiful place. And as people do, they had families, they reproduced, they made more people, they made more Polynesians, and they started cutting down their trees. And in their religion, they'd had competitions and sort of tribal wars, the way, frankly, we still on Earth have tribal competitions and wars on a larger scale, right? But in their sort of arms race, they realized that what would give them the advantage was carving these big stone heads, right? So they would carve...
I'm just going to jump in.
Sure, jump in.
For people just joining us, so that they can get who they're listening to. You're listening to Tim DeBenedictis. He is the founder of SkyCube, skycube.org. It is a small satellite. He's launching it independently, not tethered to any corporate concern that would want it to work this way or that way, but it is your way of now communicating with each other, and you get to take pictures of Earth, real-time pictures of what's going on in any country, pretty much anywhere that exists right now. He's talking about Easter Island and part of how he got into this, and noting the history of the heads, and that the Polynesian history and cutting down the trees, and it sort of imitates or was the precursor to what we've seen today in much of Canada and much of North America with the logging industry. It's a metaphor.
Right. Well, there's a pretty direct tie into space and humanity and satellites, right? So the people of Easter Island cut down their trees. They made big heads. The more trees they cut down, the more they cut into their own evaporation cycle. The worse they made their farmland. They didn't realize they were doing it. They thought the gods were punishing them. They made more heads.
Well, the gods were.
Well, eventually it got pretty bad for them. Their population crashed, right?
So the heads were in respect to the gods. Like, we'll carve these heads because we really love you, gods, so you won't punish us. And
that, and even more fiercely, look, our heads are bigger than your heads. The gods will favor us over yours. So they literally had an arms race of stone heads. And there came a day when they had cut down their last tree, right? Now, think about this, right? Suppose when those dying days came and their crops were failing, people were fighting each other. Instead of cutting down trees to make heads, suppose they'd made canoes, okay? This is exactly the analogy to where we are right now. The Earth is an island, okay? We're surrounded by not thousands of miles of ocean, but hundreds of trillions of miles to the next Earth-like planet. We can't get there, right? We maybe have 100 years left on Earth before we've, burned through all of our rare metals, all of our oil, all of the things that might let us escape from this small island that we're still on. And so, in the long term, it's important not just for learning and for education, but it's important for all of humanity to be able to get a foothold on other places. Down the line, that might be the only thing that saves all of us. So all this space exploration is something that, it touches me deeply as a person. I mean, I feel like we have a mission to go further.
Well, we do when, you're captaining the vessel of possibility. Without that sort of forward-thinking open-mindedness and eagerness and ambition to do so, we will, as Sarah Palin advised us to do, roll back into a flat Earth society where man and dinosaur walked hand and claw 6,000 years ago. I believe you, as a scientist, as an explorer of other planets, a creator of satellites, a man with extraordinary talents and skills in this field, you probably don't think that man and dinosaur walked hand and claw 6,000 years ago.
Look, I don't really pay a lot of attention to the sort of intelligent design people. I mean, the evidence for the universe, the Earth, being older than 6,000 years is so overwhelming. For example, we can see stars that are more than 6,000 light years away. did God like create the universe 6,000 years ago and then fake all of the light so it would look like they're a billion light years away? It just doesn't make any sense.
Hold on. I'm going to write that down because it's a really good question to ask Mrs. Palin. She knows these things. And by the way, up near her, Alaska, I saw pieces of chert, rock formations, that were 1.8 billion years old. They happen to be 100 miles from where she lived. She may not have known they were there. If so, she would have had them bulldozed and removed because they might be contrary to her ideology. And I think this is part of the battle we're having today is fantasy. There's the fantasy of science fiction, and then there's the fantasy of nothingness. One at least leads to hope. Science fiction is always about there can be a better future.
Yes.
That's, I think, why it's so bloody appealing to all of us. Why a sci-fi channel was born, because at the end of the day, there's egalitarianism on the Starship Enterprise. Gene Roddenberry, who I talked to when I was in college, he said, you know how hard... I'm a World War II bomber pilot, he said. I'm not a pussy. He said wussy, actually. I just, I slurred it. I'm not a wussy. I'm a World War II bomber pilot. And for me to put a black woman on the bridge of a battleship in the 1960s as an officer, not as the cocktail waitress, but as an officer with a Russian, the ultimate terrible Soviet, right? A Scotsman, a this, a that. Holy right?
Right.
And he pulled it off and literally changed the way we look at everything.
Sure.
That's what you do.
Sure. Well, the space program historically has really gotten people to take this global perspective. I mean, the first pictures of the Earth taken from the moon were done by Apollo astronauts on Christmas Day of 1968, the year that Bobby Kennedy got shot, and the Tet Offensive. I mean, it was one sort of very nice, peaceful moment when we could step back and say, "Hey, man, we're all in this together. We're all in the same place." Recently, both Neil Armstrong passed away and Sally Ride passed away. Right? As we all know, Neil Armstrong's. Look, he's a great man. I totally respect him. He's one of my heroes. The country honored him, honored his widow. Sally Ride's partner, on the other hand, got pretty much nothing, right? And so, that sort of points out that we are still in an era of social change, and things could definitely be improved in certain areas. But it's important for, I think, those of us who've been lucky to be surrounded by talented people, to have been lucky in business, and lucky just to have been blessed with a good family and good minds to go forward and take some of that out and spread some of the good news of reality, not necessarily good news of an ancient religion that has its pluses and minuses, but look, the reality that God or whatever made for us is pretty freaking cool. Let's accept it for what it is and use it and go forward and be good to each other with it.
Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us, Tim DeBenedictis. SkyCube.org, it's a nonprofit. SkyCube.org, he is launching an independent satellite. It is his, but he's making it available for you. And with it, you can communicate. You and I can communicate without having to go through a lot of this corporate nonsense. You and I can choose to take pictures pretty much real time of any place on Earth without having to rely on what Google took 2 or 3 years ago, these static pictures, but real time ones. It's our way of having our voices and putting basically democracy in outer space. A quick plug for your other apps, Tim, so that people can take advantage of these things.
So our apps are called SkySafari. There's 3 tiers of each app. SkySafari Basic is $3 on the iTunes Store, or it's $3 on Google Play if you have an Android phone as well. And it lets you do things like find out what is that big bright thing in the sky. Like you're out on a camping trip and people are wondering what is that star over there. You can use SkySafari to find out. SkySafari Plus is our intermediate version. That adds 2 really cool features. One is the ability to take a simulated flight through the solar system. This whole view I've been showing you of satellites zipping around the equator is SkySafari Plus. We're just, quote-unquote, orbiting the Earth on our iPad here.
Wow.
And then there's SkySafari Pro, which is the all bells and whistles version. It's all of that stuff, plus the ability to control your own computer-controlled telescope. So, if you're the kind of guy who's plunked down, a couple $100 or a couple grand for a nice high-end Celestron or Meade computer-controlled telescope, you can use your iPad to drive it wirelessly out in the field. And people seem to really like this stuff. It seems to have really caught on. And frankly, it's the reason I have a couple of employees now who are able to do things like build a small satellite and get it into orbit. So it's really the growth of mobile technology that's let this all happen. So SkySafari, SkySafari Plus, and SkySafari Pro on the iTunes Store or Google Play.
I love it. I love it. And just think, if the Greeks had known about you and you'd known about them and the technology had been around, boy, Homer would have written about you 3 or 4 new books. Because you would have been
Harrison, you're killing me here. I mean, I appreciate it, but you don't have to go over the top, So
well,
I'm also
just telling you how it is,
right? So
well, you're a guy who's done this for us that we may do what we weren't able to do before. So this is where I get excited.
Sure. Well, look, I also have a very good team of people. This is not just me, right? I mean, I have
single-handedly saving
no,
the people
I am
of
not
Earth?
single-handedly, getting us to the moon. Okay, I mean that was kind of a group thing, I'm into group things. So
well, good to know,
right? So I've been very lucky to run into a very talented iPhone developer who works with me on the front end of our app. I've run into a very, very smart firmware guy. I'm 2 steps removed from the professor at Stanford who invented CubeSats 10 years ago, 12 years ago. That's just a stroke of luck, okay? And but honestly, it just came from talking to people and being persistent about the vision, and the right people came together. And that is honestly what makes change happen anytime, anywhere. It's never just one person. It's a lot of good people talking to each other and working together to make it happen.
Yeah, and as Woody Allen said, much of life, 99% of it or 95%, I think he had a 95% of it is simply showing up and following your passion, and you did, and here it is. Thank you so much, Tim DeBenedictis. Let me give out your website again, nonprofit, SkyCube.org, SkyCube, one word, .org, and you can get all the information you want, and I'm sure through there, if people want to remember the names of your various apps, it's all available through there.
You betcha.
And thank you for doing it. I will look forward to talking to you again down the road, because no doubt you're going to be giving birth to a whole lot more fun, frolic, mayhem, and merriment in outer space, and hopefully rescuing us from climate change somehow in some creative new way down the road.
Harrison, thanks a bunch. I really appreciate it.
All right, my friend. Harrison with you. You have been listening to this segment of Go Harrison. We're, of course, on KPFK 90.7 FM in Los Angeles, 98.7 FM in San Diego, 99.5 in Central California, and the Progressive Radio Network, PRN-FM, all over the world. And we've been talking to Tim DeBenedictis, the founder of SkyCube.org, launching into the heavens, a way for you and I to, take pictures of the things that we want. Countries, each other, it's all good, and communicate quietly and privately. It's citizen democracy in outer space, something that Gene Roddenberry would have voted yes for. Of course, he's dead, but then he's been scattered out in the...
he's out there.
Didn't they launch him up with somebody else? And
that's right. There was a
Timothy
space
Leary,
burial.
was it?
Yes. Yeah, those guys did it right. Sure.
All right, my friend. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Harrison with you, and as you know, there are many creative people out there. So many of us, because the way the market exists, have iPhones, have iPads. In fact, more of us do than do not nowadays. And there are a lot of creative and amazing people who make them more interesting than not. For instance, since the beginning of humankind, we've looked up in the skies and wondered, what is that, and why is it what it is? But we could only see what was available to us. With light pollution, we see even less. Well, there's a guy sitting right in front of me right now, and you now see him. His name is Tim DeBenedictis, and he has created a series of apps that allow us to actually see satellites in orbit, to actually track where they're going, see the entire sky. But get this, he's launching a satellite, a mini satellite, which we're going to see in just one moment, that's going to allow you and me to talk to each other without having to rely on the larger structures. A citizen satellite. So it's time now to have our own personal satellite, Tim?
It's about that time. Absolutely. Thanks, Harrison.
Well, we're glad to have you here because, first of all, we love a good geek.
Cool. And I hope you've got one.
Yes, we've got one trapped in here right now with you. And as a good geek, you're a science fiction guy.
Right.
You love that. I did too.
Right.
The day the Earth stood still.
And this is the size of it's called a CubeSat. It's a university standard size, kind of invented at Stanford in around 2000. There have been about 150 of these kinds of things launched so far. And it's not really well known outside of the academic community that it's even possible to do this kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, look, as you say, I've been a science fiction geek my entire life. I've been a space nerd since I was 8 years old, and I had never heard the term CubeSat until last summer. So I think we're actually really on the verge of something, very new, and that could very well take off quite a bit as it becomes more widely known what you can do with these little guys.
Now, since I've been teasing you with
Sure.
what he's been holding up there, I want you to be able to see this, and you can watch a video stream right now at goharrison.com, goharrison.com, or you can go to YouTube and see it, a keyword PRNFM, and you'll see what Tim DeBenedictis is talking about right now. He's launching the first ever citizen satellite service so that you and I can talk to each other, and this is my favorite part, from one geek to another. I don't use nerd because I still can't quite align myself with that.
You got to choose your words carefully. So
definitely, fighting words, fight with yourself. But one of the things that you're going to let us do is I would be able, still the greatest science fiction movie probably ever made, but you decided that the way we tweet and do the rest of it, we're really reliant on other people's systems. And they spy on us, and they track us and do all the rest of it. But you've created, and hold this thing up, this
Sure.
little satellite here. Tim is holding up this is a satellite. Hold it up just a little higher
Sure,
there,
you
Tim.
bet. I'm going to turn it around here a little bit.
And this thing, and you can see I'm reaching through, we're actually in the same room. You wouldn't know it from watching the video. This little box, which is the size of a
Well, it's exactly 10 centimeters on a side. It's a size of a big coffee cup, right?